Hey everybody, it's Jeremy. Welcome back to Lucid's Tournament Game 7, where we are playing Helheim. This is turn 48. Let's jump into things. So, peace, finally, means that there aren't 50,000 attacks. There are a couple of different ones, but all of these are either me taking territory back from Calum, or Calum taking territory back from me as established in our negotiations. And yeah, okay, so let's take a look at things and then talk a little bit about what our game plans are for the near future. What are we going to be doing? So we've got enchantment 5 completed. We complete enchantment 1, and we complete enchantment 2 on our way up to, or thaumaturgy 1 and 2 on our way up to thaumaturgy 4. We've done some dark knowledge casting 1, 2, 3. This was just fishing to see if we get lucky. On some of the territory around Sarmatia. We've got a proclamation from me for a new prophet. And once again, I fucking forgot to rename our prophet, so that's a pain in the ass. We've got 20 blood sacrifices in Tiny Willow, which is a little bit better than what we did the previous turn, but not very good overall, so that's unfortunate. We've given over Kratos, we've taken control of Laria Ard, we've given over Cursed Land, taking control of Pergami, we took control of Titan's Breath, we lost control or gave over control of Elysia. And yeah, let's take a look at 2 of the battles that we witness between Abyssia and Tirnanog. So here's a battle in Durshid for Abyssia. So this is a retreat from the fortification in Durshid. Abyssia just trying to salvage some of his mages here. He's got 2 Anathemant Salamanders and 2 Hydromancers, it looks like. So very cool. Whereas Tirnanog has a whole host of Tuatha warriors, right? A great deal of Tuatha warriors. This is some chunky Tuatha action. Supported by some Kushis, as well as a couple of She Lords, and there's some Tuatha sorceresses in the mix here as well. Let's see if anything actually goes off. Looks like no answer. We've got some gifts of flight, etc. And then everybody's gone. Simple and easy. Okay. So it does look like perhaps Tirnanog is using flight into the back line against Abyssia. And then we have an actual battle in Durshid, as Abyssia or Tirnanog attacks the Abyssian fortification, but there's not really anything left. It's just the misspread on the walls. Misspread are really cool, by the way. I think misspread are pretty neat. But not much to be done. Misspread go up. Oh, did the misspread not come down? Oh, really? Very cool. Okay. I guess he didn't have the... I guess maybe they just routed without leadership. So that is Durshid in control of Tirnanog's hands. Which, by the way, for clarification, if you did not remember, Durshid is a throne province. Okay, so that puts Tirnanog thrones at 1, 2, 3. So just keeping that in mind. Very cool. We've got unexpected event in Srim Clavur. A little bit more population, a little bit more income. Srim Clavur has actually grown for us. It was, I want to say, sub 2k when we first got it. That might be a bit of an overestimation. But more than the population per se, right? the added income events have actually made Strimcliver not a bad location for income. That's pretty cool. And we have a event in Lyratos where we have been blessing the crops throughout the province, and we got plus Dominion and plus gold. Very cool. We've done some patrolling in Tiny Willow. Great. What are we doing this turn? Okay, so we have at least 5 more turns of peace with Helheim. Right, the next time an attack order can be made is on turn 53, with the attack being on turn 54. So we've got a little while there. We could launch into attacks against Tirnanog. We could launch into attacks against Abyssia. Okay, Hinam is actually still in the game. They yet live. They yet live. So that's interesting. Let's talk about what we're actually doing this turn. We're doing a couple of different movements. Most of this is just moving people around, not for much of a purpose other than relocating mages to be within range of certain scenarios. Excepting for, we are relocating mages both to Ormond this turn. We have 5 Jarls with Sanguine Dowsing Rods heading to Ormond. And we're going to probably be chasing them with a scout or something along those lines in the next turn or two. And we are prepping. We're actually still doing Sanguine Dowsing Rods because we're going to almost immediately put someone up in, probably in Sinafe, although maybe in Pulmania instead. Probably Sinafe. We are going to blood hunt in 3 different locations, at least in the very near future. We might move into a location like Zimria, although I tend to not like to do anything that's over 10k. Anything that's over 10k grows at a pretty significantly faster rate than things that are in between 5 and 10k. And anything under 5k tends to grow so slowly that it doesn't matter. So 5k is the break point for blood hunting. Above 5k, it doesn't really matter the size of the province. So in between 5 and 10k is kind of that sweet spot. So that's why I'm targeting, even though Pulmania and Sinafe and Ormond are good provinces, we can't do Rame because Rame is going to disease the people that are there, right? Lyratos isn't good. Pergami and Ancient Wood, as well as Titan's Breath Peak, are all on the periphery of our empire. They're more likely to get hit on a surprise attack or at any given time, right? We want interior provinces if at all possible. Dendra Nigra is already over 10k, right? Kohnberg is less than 10k, but we don't want to screw with the population here because that will decrease the supplies. So we would prefer to avoid that if at all possible. Same thing with Dead Forest. Grimclover is below 5k. Spring Grove is only barely above 5k. It would go away way too fast. High Peaks as well. And then Menace and Laria, those are both up in territories that I think are very unlikely for us to be able to hold for very long during a pitched war. So, that brings us kind of back down to this section. These are kind of the richest of the Saramatian lands, Brightgate, Ungbaloth, and Zimria, right? Along with Saramatia itself. So we're going to try to hold on to those and then blood hunt in the lands surrounding Helheim and see how we go from there. Man, Saramatia's freaking population sucks. 30k. Crash. Anyways, so we're gonna try to blood hunt in earnest over the next 5 turns. The end result being that we are going to try to tag all of the Ice Devils, slash move into Archdevils, that type of scenario. Having those, well, I don't want to call them. The line between Thug and Super Combatant can be kind of gray depending on the scenario, right? I would place Ice Devils at high Thug rather than low Super Combatant. But most of the Archdevils are low Super Combatant. And then you get into things like the Lords of Hell, which are obviously like Super Combatants. But, well, most of them are. Some of them are not. So that's the main focus that's going on for the turn right now, is gearing up to Blood Hunt in as many different areas as we can. To that end, we are focusing on recruiting Vanyarls. Right, so we have 1, 2, 3 Vanyarls coming out. We are still trying to push Van Heers in Koenberg as our research capital. We've got Hell Heritings being pumped out of Helheim. We've got Jade Maidens coming out of Dead Forest. We are going to probably... So I'm always kind of on blood hunting in certain scenarios, right? Like, so for example, Tiny Willow as a province, right, has a laboratory, and that's one of the reasons why I want to blood hunt there, is because the blood hunt in a lab, you immediately get those sacrifices, right? They go directly into the lab. You can use them wherever. If you blood hunt in a place that doesn't have a lab, then you've got to ferry those blood sacrifices to other locations, and that can be a little bit of a pain. But going through the trouble of setting up infrastructure just for faster turnover on your blood income can be a little rough. As the scenario is right now, I'm probably just going to pop out a couple of scouts. Probably next turn we'll pop 2 scouts from Osens, and then probably in a turn or 2 as we get ready to hunt in Sanafe, I'll probably pop scouts out of, I guess it might have to be Dead Forest, or we might just do Osens again and send them over to Sanafe. But then we'll do the daisy chain. One goes, one back, of taking the blood sacrifices to a nearby laboratory and dropping them off. So no big summons this turn. No crazy casting or forging this turn. Right, we are forging. We're doing some more basic items. Right, more sanguine dowsing rods, more frost brands, more storm spools, more owl quills. We are doing another dwarven hammer. We're probably going to do another dwarven hammer or 2, up to the point to where we feel comfortable just hanging out for a little bit. And we've got Mother Oak up. We're gonna let Mother Oak float for a turn or 2 and see how that goes, before we start hitting heavy on the investment for nature gems. But after that, we might start popping out shields, vine shields. Okay. And then we've got a little bit, everything else is mostly the same, right? Some dark knowledge casting, some reanimation casting. Nothing crazy going on anymore. But we are adjusting our research ever so slightly. So we're going to finish up Thaumaturgy 3 and 4 this turn. That is going to primarily give us Augury, Haruspex, Auspex, Gnome Lore, right? It does give us a couple of other little things here or there. It does give us, specifically, it gives us Iron Will for certain thug combinations, which will allow them to have a higher MR, which can be useful, but that's not crazy. That's not a really big deal, right? And then it actually gives us Curse of the Desert, which can be somewhat useful depending on what we are going up against. If we are going up against strong sacreds, for example, that do not have high what's the word I'm looking for? Don't have high MR, or even it doesn't have to be sacreds, just units, less units, but very tough units. This can actually do a great job of exhausting them, right? So you throw this at like a block of, for example, this is very good against Olmish troops, but in our particular situation, you can throw this against something like, throw that against something like Burning Ones, who have relatively low MR. Them doing magic resistance versus plus a DRN versus 22 is actually a little rough, right? Now that's without any buffs or anything like that, obviously, right? But the same goes for Misbred, same goes for Abyssinian Infantry. And then for something like Tirnanog, the Tuathas only have 1 point base higher, so it's still somewhat acceptable against them, right? So, and that is a spell that our Ice Devils can toss out very, very easily. So that is somewhat interesting, right? And it hits a pretty decently sized area compared to a lot of other spells. But specifically, we are going for the remote site searching spells, and I think Augury is going to be really important for us. I think Harvespex is also going to be pretty important for us to make sure that we can cover Darmation lands. But I think Augury is actually going to be a potentially really big option for us because we now have some mages that are not just that are fire, but they're not our god and they're not Loki, right? So what that means is we can start spamming out Augury with our Hierophlegaton, and if we are lucky, we can boost our flame income, our fire income, by quite a bit, and that could help us in the mid to late game. As we get into things like Archdevils, we're going to be able to get quite a bit more fire access in our nation period, so that's going to be pretty useful. So that could be a way into some future power. After that, we're actually going to be taking a jump in construction. So I did want to go straight for either Blood 7 or go up Conjuration to probably like Conjuration 5. But we're going to, with our current peace scenario, we have a potentially rare opportunity to jump into Construction 6. So Construction 4, or Construction 5 rather, will cover in a single turn, and then Construction 6 will cover in 2 turns. So 4 turns from now, we should be done with Construction 6, and that will allow us to turn all of these pyros into my mind is blanking, into Lightless Lantern forgers. So we'll be able to forge a bunch of Lightless Lanterns relatively rapidly to throw onto our Van Heer library, which will greatly increase our research speed, which is pretty necessary at this point. I think it is safe to assume that we are greatly behind the research curve, and that if we want to make an impact on the late middle game, early late game, then we're going to need to improve our research pretty rapidly. So this is a route that can take us there. So that's kind of the overall game plan. And then that's also going to give us a bunch of different other options, right? I wouldn't go after Construction 6 in this type of scenario just for Lightless Lanterns, but it's going to get us Lightless Lanterns, right, which is going to expedite our research, but it's also going to give us access to better equipment, right? We need good equipment for our Ice Devils, for our Archdevils, for our Van Jarls or Hengadroths or whatever we want to utilize, right? We are going to have to be pretty focused on our thugging game, and forging equipment is going to be a massive part of that. That's part of why I'm doing an investment now in hammers, where we want to get up to the point to where we have 10-ish or so hammers that we can make 1 to 2 full sets of gear every turn, depending on the situation. The goal being normally 1 set of gear every turn, plus a couple of other things if need be, right? Like still having someone doing owl quills, having one person do a lightless lantern every turn. So that's 2 hammers. You only have 8 now. And then if you think you've got one-hander, shield, helmets, body armor, boots if they're not mounted, 2 miscellaneous, so that's 7, right? So you're sitting at 1 other freebie that you can kind of toss out too if you're not using boots. So that's kind of the goal-ish there, right? Is to be able to accomplish that and have very strong thugging options or super combatant options. But then we also get into some other scenarios that open up some more interesting situations, some combinations that we can break into with our god, for instance, like crystal gear, being able to throw things like Moonvine bracelet and a Tree Lord staff on one of our Jade sorceresses, for instance, and then all of a sudden we have a Nature 5 that we can throw into the battles, do things like mass regeneration, and plenty of other stuff, right? We can do a run-up alteration to try to snatch mass protection or something like that. And we can start casting that pretty easy with relatively little investment, and that actually goes a long way in some of the battles that we could be looking at in the near future. Something like going up against someone like Calum, right? That helps even the playing field quite a bit. So we have a whole lot of different options in the near future, but a lot of them are going to be facilitated by getting to Construction 6, having those forging opportunities, ramping up our research, etc. So, and then the other part of them are going to be opened up by investing, I think, pretty heavily into a blood economy, which is on the table. So that is going to be it for the turn. The next several turns, I'm assuming, are going to be relatively passive because no one at this current point in time is in a very strong position to steal thrones and win. Tir Nanog has control of 3 thrones right now. They can obviously, right, they can attack Abyssia, attack Helheim perhaps. But if we think about the thrones that are on their borders, realistically, the ones that they have access to are this one for Abyssia, this one for Abyssia, and then this one kind of on our borders, right? If they go for any of those, Calum and I are both set to jump on them, right? Fomoria is in no position to do anything about thrones. Abyssia could fight back and is trying to fight back against Tir Nanog, obviously. So if they come swinging back in, they could potentially be an issue. But right now, I don't really see that being too terribly big of an idea. What I would assume more likely to be is over the course of the next several turns that Calum has purchased a piece, Calum is probably going to gear themselves up for a rush towards various different locations. So Calum has Great Woods, for instance, and that is pretty much it. I don't think they've even claimed Great Woods. They've claimed Great Woods. But they are in position for Saren Forest, they're in position for Caves of Madness, they're in position for Dershid, they're in position for Fever Fins, they're in position for Ossuary, right? They're actually in position for Yellow Caves, they're in position for Robberhome, so they touch way more than everyone else does, and my assumption would be is that they are probably going to be gearing towards that type of thing. The only thing I think for this whole scenario is no one really has a bunch of easy H3s except for Abyssia. And that was obviously that was Abyssia's earlier plays where, okay, everyone's distracted with Kalem. I have H3s. If I can hit these thrones real quick, boom, 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 there we go. But everyone else, as far as I'm aware, doesn't really have H3s. I don't know if anyone's even in Blackwaters. I guess if Kalem goes into Blackwaters, he could potentially pull out some Bishop Fish. So maybe we keep an eye on that. But actually, let's head down towards Blackwaters and see if we can notice anything going on there. Okay, that's going to be it for the turn. Thanks for watching. I will see you all next time. Bye, everybody.